Okay, it's me again, Mr. Moreno. This is for Past 7, Chapter 1.4, Earth's Atmosphere. And the chapter title is Human Activities Affect the Atmosphere. So, again, like the last one, there are some stuff the book assumes you already know. Maybe you do know this, but I'd like to go over it anyways. There are some symbols in science that we use to replace words we use often. You can think of it kind of like abbreviations. In English, you use abbreviations like RD can mean road, because it's a word we use very often. So the same in science, we have some of these symbols that can replace words we use all the time. For example, O means oxygen, and O2 is the oxygen that we actually breathe in and use. CO2 means carbon dioxide, and if you notice a pattern, di means 2 in Latin. Cl means chlorine. O3 is ozone. It's 3 atoms of oxygen, if you remember atoms from the time before. And these are some special atoms that we will go over in this chapter. N means nitrogen, and N2 is the nitrogen that is in the air, part of that 78% that's in the atmosphere. And H2O is called water, but you can think of it like 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. Alright, so humans can affect the Earth's atmosphere. Some people think this is a myth. It is not a myth at all, and you can prove it very easily. If you look outside any major building in Seoul or in Los Angeles, you'll see a lot of air pollution called smog. You won't see that in a forest somewhere far away from a city. That is because that comes from human actions. So why do we have smog? Even though we have all this advanced technology, we still have smog. Why? Well, think of this factory. This factory has long pipes. And actually, in the pipe, there are systems made to remove the bad stuff. So here, there's one system to remove the bad stuff, another system to remove the bad stuff. And for the most part, it works, at least in richer countries. But there are some things that are too small, like CO2 or Pb. That's a symbol. It's another symbol that means lead. But we don't need to know that one now. You just need to know that there are some things called particulates. It's one of the vocabulary words. They're too small, and we cannot get rid of it. We just don't have the technology. We don't have that kind of, how can I say, we're not advanced enough. So that mixed with just water vapor, and water vapor can also be a kind of pollution, mixes with fog into this dark gray nasty thing we call smog. And that makes a very ugly view of big cities like Seoul and Los Angeles. Thankfully, it's not as bad as other cities I've unfortunately had to see. For example, Beijing or Guangzhou, China, that have a very bad smog problem. Some cities, like Chengdu, China, is so bad, airplanes refuse to land on those airports until it gets clear, because you cannot see the ground. So it can be a big problem. So here are the two, I would say, biggest effects we're having on the environment. But it's important to know these are different. They are not the same thing. And even adults will mix these two up. Even smart adults, well, I guess smart is arguable. But one is called too much of the greenhouse effect. A little bit of the greenhouse effect, we like that. That keeps our Earth warm. Otherwise, it would be a frozen wasteland. But too much causes something called global warming. And global warming is the gradual heating up of our planet. While that doesn't sound too bad, because especially if you live somewhere with long winters, it can be very, very devastating to places that are near the ocean. Because that causes, if the water in the ocean heats up, the ocean expands. Things that heat up expand, like we will learn later. And some islands can actually go underwater. And the coastland of some areas can go underwater as well. New York City, Manhattan, is not that far above water. So if the water level rises, you're going to have to build a wall or maybe something even worse. So that happens when the atmosphere gets too thick because of particulates or other kind of pollution like carbon dioxide. And that comes from factories like we saw before, or cars. Cars produce carbon dioxide. And here's the wave from the sun. It gets trapped here more because now it's thicker. Think of it like wearing a thicker jacket. If you wear a thicker jacket, your body is warmer, right? Well, imagine just getting a thicker and thicker and thicker jacket. Eventually, you're too hot and it's not comfortable. Another very serious problem is called ozone depletion or decreasing of the ozone layer. The ozone layer, O3, it's another shield that we have like kind of above the atmosphere. It's part of the atmosphere, but it's on the top side. And that protects us from, if you remember from the last chapter, ultraviolet UV radiation. Now, currently, there is actually a hole in the ozone layer. And it was our fault, humans' fault, but we kind of didn't know this would happen. But there is something called chlorine that we were putting in the atmosphere by accident. This part is not in the book. It was something called a chlorofluorocarbon. But we call it a CFC for short. CFCs were in the 1970s in a lot of products like spray cans, that thing that makes the spray go up. They were CFCs. So spray cans, also in refrigerators, we had a lot of CFCs. What happens is that this molecule has a very bad habit of liking to destroy ozone. The chlorine here, the chloro part, destroys ozone, and we cannot replace it. We don't have technology to make more ozone. So quickly we banned this, but the damage was kind of done. We already have a big hole. And some scientists in a university in California actually discovered this hole in the ozone layer, and we realized this is a big problem, especially in countries like Australia. Even to this day, if the hole is near the country, you cannot go to the beach there. You should not even go outside because ultraviolet can cause skin cancer, and that is not something you want to get. So ozone layer depletion, decreasing of the ozone layer, and global warming. Two different things. Of course, they're both in the atmosphere, but you need to remember they are different.